Yeah, we're chatting away, and meanwhile, the clock is ticking.
Yeah. Good morning.
Good morning. How you doing?
I'm okay. How are you?
I'm doing great.
Hopefully that
Um,
sun stays out longer than stays away today. Let's hope. It's a great day.
yeah, I hope so too. I mean, just kind of putting my phone on to do not disturb. I noticed I haven't actually been outside, but I looked outside. It looked nice.
Yeah.
I get to go outside after something like this.
Good.
They let me out for a little walk.
Good.
So we've got a lot to talk about,
Yeah.
and I'll remind you. You're rubbing against whatever that microphone speaker combo. It's just
Thank
okay
you.
because it's really loud. It's just
Yeah.
it's funny how loud it is. Um, and then we'll get started. So, welcome back to Future Tech, your weekly source for the latest in tech and innovation and business. I'm the startup coach, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host John Irwin. How you doing, John?
Good, Craig. How are you? How are things?
Things are good. I'm busy. I'm behind on almost everything, but there's a lot of cool stuff going on with what I'm doing and some of my new clients, and there's a
Good.
lot of cool stuff going on with tech.
For sure. Yeah.
And it's going to take me a few seconds to set up this first one,
When you
but
as you're setting it up, I'm gonna have to pick your brain since you're a really good expert in pitch decks.
oh yeah,
So I'm gonna have to pick your brain at some point. But let's dive right in.
absolutely. Anytime. I just went over a person's pitch deck not too long ago, like yesterday.
Yeah.
And I want to get into this. So, this first article comes from Interesting Engineering.
Yeah.
World's first mental images extracted from the human brain.
Using AI. Yeah. So
Yeah. And I'm just like, this isn't, they're not talking about images of the brain. They're
no.
talking about, yeah,
Yeah. So
what you're
like
thinking about.
the second I read this, I was like, this is cool because maybe this is an alternative to an invasive surgery of Neuralink. So let's dive in and maybe we can get into it. So the research was conducted by a team in Japan. It was led by scientists from the National Institutes for Quantum Science and Technology in Osaka. The goal was to develop a new brain decoding technology using artificial intelligence to translate patterns of human brain activity into visualized mental images. So they sought to advance beyond previous work that could only recreate images a person had actually seen. In this study, though, what the participants first had was they had their brain activity measured using a functional MRI, which is a functional magnetic resonant imaging, while passively viewing a large data set of around 1,200 natural images. What this did was it provided a mapping of the neural correlations with different visual stimuli. And for those that don't know, an fMRI or a functional magnetic resonant imaging, it works by detecting changes in blood oxygenation and flow that occur in response to neural activity in the brain or spinal cord of living subjects. So active brain regions consume more oxygen and blood compared to surrounding tissues. Makes sense. And this information can be used to infer neuronal activity. I know I always have a hard time with saying that word. It doesn't directly detect electrical activity, but it is based on different properties of oxyhemoglobin and deoxyhemoglobin within the vascular supply of the brain. So the researchers, what they did in this study was they trained a generative AI model, specifically a GAN, which is a generative adversarial network, on this brain image mapping data. The GAN was able to learn representations of how visual concepts are encoded in patterns of neuroimaging signals. In these tests, they had participants merely image or recall images without any visuals presented, while again monitoring their brain activity via fMRI. So by analyzing these imagery-related activation patterns through the lens of the trained AI model, the researcher system was able to reconstruct rough sketches resembling the mental images held in mind by each individual, which is pretty cool. Some examples of fairly accurate recreation of a leopard image. Discerning features, they showed its ears and spots, as well as producing a sketch of an airplane with wing lights. So it's a cool proof of concept that may one day we get somewhere further with this. But it was really cool.
Yeah, I think this is straight out of a sci-fi fantasy world. So just to go through the experimentation. So they programmed the AI with a bunch of images.
Yeah.
They hooked some sort of put some sort of helmet on my head with sensors.
Yeah.
And then showed me 1,200 images and then mapped my brain as I saw those images. And they showed these to all these different participants. And then later they were able now to, I assume, using the same kind of helmet, not just from across the room, pull up pictures of what they think I'm thinking about.
Yeah. And the thing that baffles me is how are they converting what it's reading into the actual image? And obviously it's using the AI, but I'd love to get into some of the details, into the weeds of how it's actually doing that.
Yeah, I'm curious because odds are it's not actually going to look a lot like what you're looking at. What it's done is they're saying, okay, this, when he's looking at tigers, a tiger sitting looks like this, a tiger standing looks like this, a tiger, whatever, and your mental brain is lit up a certain way.
Yeah.
And so I'm not sure if it can tell the difference between, say, a running tiger and a sitting tiger and a sleeping tiger. But if they showed us these pictures and mapped our brain through these things, then was teaching the AI based on these same images, and then feeding it much more images around those same animals, saying, hey, these are all tigers sitting, these are all this, these are all that. So when someone's thinking about a tiger, go nuts and extract from all these things.
Yeah. The one question I have with this is, what about someone with ADHD? So who have a million thoughts growing, someone with myself who has ADHD, who has a million thoughts and can think of a leopard and can look at these pictures, but like, how quickly can it pick up on what I'm thinking? So like, if they were to put it on someone with ADHD, I'm thinking about a leopard, but maybe I'm also thinking about a lion because it relates to a leopard, or maybe I'm thinking about a leopard eating a giraffe, or like how people, like, there's a million thoughts going on in their heads.
Okay, so if we're looking at these images, I agree with you, because the one on the left apparently is the targeted image, and the one on the right is the reconstructed image. So sounds like we got a little ways to go.
Oh, for sure.
But
that's with normal people brains.
Fair enough. And I agree. And we're talking about ADHD. I kind of feel like it's, at least with me, it's there's this wall of noise. And you have to kind of push it back to focus on these things. And so you're right. You get constantly, your signal to noise ratio is constantly disrupted, and it takes a lot to focus. And how do things like this translate those things when the signal to noise ratio is so high?
Yeah.
When it's, you're not focused on all these things, you're constantly, all these thoughts are constantly on your brain, and you're like, no, I need to focus on this, please leave me alone.
Exactly. Yeah, like, you could be thinking about a leopard or whatever, but at the same time you could be thinking about, oh, how fast does a leopard run? Oh, where are they found? And like,
did I leave the garage door open? Am I going to go for a ride later? John mentioned sun. What's the temperature like? What do I need to wear? Well, wait a minute. While you're still, because your brain is like going on these adventures, it wants to take any one of these things and run away. And you're like, no, we need to stay right here, right where we are, and apparently create images like this.
Exactly. I bet you if they would put it on someone like you or I, that image would not look even close to whatever that is on the right there. But anyways, we'll have to see.
This seems like it's definitely very interesting technology, and the fact that I'm a little I look at this images and I don't know. Could I tell that's a tiger? Could you tell that's a tiger on the
No,
right?
you can
Yeah.
tell there's ears.
Yeah. And there's a mouth,
Yeah,
but
it
I
looks
would
more like a camel.
camel. Yeah. That's
Yeah.
what. So is this a blurring of fine tuning of the frequencies probably, or is this bad training of the AI, or is this, just guesswork on part of the
Well,
AI?
well, I think it could be a guesswork on part of the AI for sure, and that's the thing too. And if you look back to like Dolly, right? When Dolly first came out, the images of actual things looked horrible, and so um, I think yeah. Again, how much of the question is though is how much of this is actually translating, and how much of it is guesswork, like as far as making assumptions from the AI's perspective, right?
Yeah, I think there's a long way to go,
Yeah,
but if they're just getting to here, this is great. Now
yeah.
we got to say, okay, do we need to finally more tune the database and the sensors? What are there better sensors to be using? Can you get better feedback from different things? Should be calibrating, not just maybe there's other things from the fMRI framework they need to be looking at.
Yeah, exactly.
But, I'm encouraged by these things because now, you start to look at, as we kind of mentioned, I think at least at one point we're talking, a far enough advanced technology is looks like magic to the person who doesn't understand it. And
Mhm.
now we're looking at, okay, well, people are going to actually be able to know what you're thinking at. You'll be walking through a lobby and the security won't be looking at monitors of people. They'll be looking at images of what you're thinking about on the monitors to
Yeah,
know, oh, this guy, see, we got to watch this one.
yeah.
He's
He's got
thinking,
an
no,
image of a bomb in his
yeah,
head,
yeah.
or
So,
people dying, or yeah, yeah,
this is not, I don't think all that far away if we're at here now, because this is
yeah,
iterative. And then, how do we map that to the brain patterns? And that we have phones on us all the time. We got the Apple Vision Plus and all these glasses. We have all the sensors close enough to our head that we're getting pretty close to be able to get a lot of information without needing a specific helmet.
yeah. Exactly. Yeah, we'll get there. Obviously, there's but the technology is still in its infancy. But um, I'm interested to see if this can be a better solution or alternative solution to Neuralink.
Yeah, but again, Neuralink is a thing in the head. What
Yeah,
is now? Do people have to wear hats, or is this something that, like, what is it that we're going to have to do to replace the sensor that Neuralink would replace?
yeah. I don't know, but I all I know is like at least with an fMRI, like at least it's non-invasive, right? And so it reads magnetic signals from outside the head. So you don't require surgery for this. But how big is that device? And that's where we have to get into how small can they make this device? Will it look like a hat, or you know, or is it just going to be a big, huge helmet?
Yeah, they don't really talk about the tools they use to do this from a size point of view. Based on everything we talked about, I assume it's almost the size of a MRI machine taking up a whole room, and
Yeah, at
um,
this point, yeah.
versus being able to have it in a hat or whatnot. And then, who do we want to be subjugated to these things? Do we want everyone trying to read out what we're thinking all the time? Are we going to
No,
have tinfoil hats or whatever that we're actually going to want to wear them?
maybe
Because
those guys with the tinfoil hats knew something from back in the day.
maybe,
Yeah.
maybe. Um, so I'm going to switch the banner here. We're going to jump on to the next one. These, and I'm going to put the different background up in a second, but these Electron, Okay, this team develops a new way to generate powerful and focused X-rays using electron wave shaping.
Yeah. So again, more scientists out of Asia here, but university in Singapore, they've developed a new simulation-based technique for generating highly focused and powerful X-rays using a process called electron wave shaping. So, through modeling how electrons interact when passed through a phase plate that modifies their wave pattern, they showed electrons could be sculpted to produce X rays up to 1,000 times stronger than conventional methods, while also allowing tunable control over emission directions. So, just a couple things here. Electron wave shaping refers to a technique. What it does is it manipulates the wave properties of electrons in order to control and optimize the production of X-rays. So for those quick science thing, electrons have wave-like properties. And it's described by quantum mechanics, just like photons. But their wavelength can be changed through interactions with electric and magnetic fields. So, in the context of this, with X-rays, electrons are accelerated and fired at a target material. As they collide and decelerate, X-rays are emitted via some effect. I can't remember what the name of it is. So, conventionally, the electrons have an undefined wavefront, resulting in divergent, low-intensity X-ray emitted over a wide range. Electron wave shaping uses devices like faceplates that apply voltage gradients to controllably alter the electron's wave patterns as they pass through. So by shaping the waves, their probability of interaction with the target can be increased, which results in higher yield of X-rays, which gives you the higher resolution that you can expect with this new technique. So by precisely matching the shaped electron waves to interfere with atomic positions and we're talking graphene too, in a graphene target, they concentrated X-ray production. So adjusting the plate voltage, what it did was it transformed emissions to directionally focused beams. So potentially this promises tabletop devices using less energy than large X-ray tubes, enabling a lot of new applications potentially again.
So reading this, the big difference between the normal method and this wave shaping electron method is before you just shoot X-rays at it, and now we're focusing them in a specific direction. So they're more focused, they're intenser waves, but they're also like directed in one direction, so they penetrate better rather than scattering more.
Yeah.
So I'm because there's this thing called Bremsstrahlung, which is breaking radiation.
Yeah, that's the effect. That's the radiation. Yeah.
So or breaking radiation, which sounds like good. So what we're doing is we're making it so strong that this Bremsstrahlung radiation or breaking radiation happens less. Like it seems like a protective barrier, and we're ramming right through it. So, does this mean there's less radiation scattered in the room, so people have to be less protected, or does it, from if it's a person being affected, it seems like the effect of the radiation of the X-ray would be magnified on that person.
I don't think it's more of the intensity or magnification. It's more of the focused beam, if that makes sense. I don't know if there's more X-rays that are being produced, or if there's less. You would think though that if you're getting a more fixed beam, that there might be a more focused dosage of X-rays that are gonna happen. But based on this, from my understanding, and again, not an expert, but they need a lot of power in order to generate X-rays using traditional scanners. And so if you're able to reduce that power and focus that beam more, potentially you're going to get less X-rays produced, but in a more focused area, if that makes sense, as opposed to a more general area.
That makes sense.
I don't know.
And it says that you can now use this for finding defects in like electronic circuits or something. And I'm like, is that a real practical use?
So yes, actually, you know what? So this is more, we're getting into some spy kind of stuff. But this is how other companies will figure out the architecture of other manufacturers' chips by using X-ray technology, so that they can see how they can see the chip's architecture by just shooting X-rays at it. And they currently do this right now.
Yeah. And so, but why would we use it to detect flaws in semiconductor chips accurately? Are we?
So as we, yeah, so this is just me again spitballing, but as we get smaller and smaller on the nanoscale of wavelength to produce these chips, the defects, I'm guessing, are becoming smaller and smaller and smaller. And so having a higher resolution would probably help to find and identify those defects in those new chips that are being produced.
Yeah, so the chips coming off the line, we got three 3-nanometer chips being made now in processors.
So.
And
Maybe even 2. I can't remember. But
I think there might be in we were talking about some new cool stuff, but the ones I think Apple are shipping now are 3 nanometers. And I'm just looking at this thing. Okay, so what we're doing is being able to detect what the yield rate is at closer to manufacturing and tweaking the results. So if we're getting a 50% failure rate, we can scan these right when they're coming off to detect where they are and fix the manufacturing process, kind of thing.
I'm thinking yes, absolutely, yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. You know that and correct me if I'm wrong. I think there's actually only one company, and I think they're based out of Norway, that produces the machines to produce chips. TSMC is one. I can't remember, but don't hold me to this. So if I'm wrong, let me know, guys. But I think there's one. There might be 2 that produce the actual machines, that manufacture the machines to produce chips.
Yeah, this is and Sam Altman, isn't he trying to raise $7 trillion to build his AI fab company to build chips?
Is he? That's
Yeah.
a lot. Did you know, speaking of quickly AI, there is a Canadian company that has developed a phenomenal chip as well as new encoding or and a new technique for AI. It's called Grok, GROQ. Anyways, we diverse, but yeah.
If you know these people, let's see if we can get them on and talking about their product.
Yeah.
Back to this. So I can see, they're talking about probably using that example to talk about the level of resolution they could get to potentially.
Yeah.
When I'm an old man, I've been married, I have kids. My wife was pregnant in the US, and we did the first ultrasounds down there. And what we got down there was much better resolution than what we received up here. And US versus Canada, when I say down there, up here.
Yeah.
This probably takes those things to a whole new level, and being able to use these in all sorts of industries to do exactly that. If we go back to talking about liquid metal printing and those DNA nanorobots, and we could be pumping these off the press and having tools like this detecting the defects early on, because I don't doubt they'll be 100% perfect.
Yeah, well, in order for us to get this technology and do it, Canada needs to invest a lot more money into research and development. But there's a lot of potentials here for for this technology as well too. So it's really, I think we're about 5-10 years off from practical tabletop devices for this. But
yeah, and when we say practical tabletop devices, what does that mean?
well, where it's commercially available. So,
But you go to the doctors and they're using something that's not going to be anywhere near this, and everyone, you got to wear this big leaded thing. You got to stand behind the wall. So you just pick one up and shove it on your desk at the office. People want to come in and scan stuff. They come into Bob's office and press the button.
No, I think we're talking like GE, where they're selling to these devices to hospitals and things like that. I think that's where we're at. And we do have, I know we have portable X-ray machines now that can fit inside of a truck. But yeah, I think in a clinical setting, we're talking 5-10 years away.
Yeah, this is really cool, and I'm only scratching the surface of what we could do with this technology. I'm very curious, and so always have to go to the dystopian Craig. And I got a couple other questions probably for you here. I just wanted to talk about my dystopian. Does this sounds like we could make beam weapons out of this technology?
Absolutely, we could. Actually, to be honest, maybe it all depends on how far the electron beam, how much of it dissipates over a distance. So depending on the beam itself, and the power behind the beam, who knows how far you can actually, shoot that beam, if that makes sense.
They didn't really talk about it. I didn't see here whether it takes up more or less energy doing this or the same.
I think it takes up less energy. Okay. Because you're more directed as opposed to, so typical X-ray tubes require kilowatts of power, whereas what I'm assuming is this tabletop, if you're using wave shaping devices, they can function with watts instead of kilowatts.
What other areas of physics research could benefit from this electron wave patterns other than X-rays?
Well, yeah, we talked about the chip industry. There's photonics, so imprinting photon quantum states onto shaped electron waves. That could open up interacting with light and matter in new regimes. And I know we talked about light and time and different things like that. So that one's really cool. There may also be opportunities to coherently control, like using the techniques here, they could, beyond just X-ray generation, they can control other emitted radiations through tailored electron material interactions. There's different things like tunable oriented light beams. It's a lot of really more complex physics and areas of physics that this is more, but electron diffraction. So if you could control electron waves, you could tune diffraction patterns for structural characterization with even greater sensitivity. Like there's a lot of stuff. So essentially, where electron beams are used to probe or excite matter precisely sculpting, it could unlock new capabilities in the quantum kind of realm, if that makes sense.
I think this could be used in all sorts of ways, and we're just scratching the surface. So I'm really interested in electron wave shaping. I think there's limited uses to the X-ray part of it, but I think this is going to change a lot of different scientific fields.
Yeah, I think one, if we're talking about from the medical perspective, mammography could actually benefit.
Absolutely.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, I could see all sorts of from that. Yeah, absolutely. Then that's a huge problem. So
for sure.
This is great. You have anything else you want to add to this before we jump to our next one?
No, just like there obviously are safety concerns, because and you were talking about the radiation dose. So even with the ability to focus X-rays, there's always unintended exposure that could lead to excessive radiation absorption in tissues. So obviously there would still be like strict emission control and shielding that would be needed. But again, there's still, so if those of you out there thinking, oh, we won't need to use those lead vests or any protection, we're still going to need that. It just might not be as predominant, but there's going to be new techniques that are going to be needed for this. So
definitely, I'm really interested. Like I said, whenever we get to this level, it's really cool. I used to work, do IT work. I was an outsourced IT guy for a company called Gleg Water, and I handled all their systems. And one of the coolest things they did was they made water that was either so acidy or so alkaline, so pure that, you know, Intel and whatnot used it in their chip building process to get rid of any impurities and all this kind of stuff. It's really interesting, this whole process at this level.
yeah.
Which kind of leads us to our next topic, which is right up your alley. Cannot be explained. Scientists unveil revolutionary SS-H2 steel. So this is, SS stands for stainless steel. What's the H2 stand for? Hydrogen too?
Hydrogen. Yeah. Okay. So the paper that we're talking about, what it does is it describes a novel stainless steel called SS-H2. And this is one of those mistakes that has led to a discovery. So this is really cool. So it's got this SS-H2 has remarkably high corrosion resistance compared to conventional stainless steels. What they've done is they've used a sequential dual passivation approach. And this is, again, from the researchers at University of Hong Kong. They were able to develop a steel that withstands corrosion even at voltages over 1700 millivolts in chloride solutions like seawater and things like that. So this is really cool. So dual passivation is a process that involves chemically treating a metal to increase its resistance to corrosion by forming a cohesive, inert, and insoluble oxide layer on its surface. So the major breakthrough, because this is a major breakthrough because stainless steel begins corroding around 1,000 millivolts. So the team achieved this by exploiting the formation of a secondary manganese-based passive layer on top of the usual chromium oxide layer. So the thing that I'm saying is kind of like a oops or a mistake and has led to is manganese is not expected to enhance corrosion resistance based on its chemical makeup and all that. So from a basic science perspective, the microscopic mechanics at play could have broader significance. So the thing is does manganese incorporation induce strain or impact barrier properties? Like there's a whole bunch of things that come into play that they have to explore more because they were surprised that manganese would do this.
Yeah, I think the more they mess with this stuff, the more they're going to find out that, you know, physics works a little bit different than we think when you start mixing these up.
Yes.
So the performance of this new steel in saltwater electrolyzer comparable to the current industry practice uses titanium. So can you explain a little bit about this process? And I didn't see how much longer it lasts. Okay, and how much cheaper than titanium it is. Do you have information around that?
No, I didn't do a huge deep dive into this one. This was one that I'd read about, and then I got busy and wasn't able to deep dive further into this. But so the thing is there's a whole bunch of things that come into play here. Life cycle testing, and the biggest thing here is this could be used in the field of hydrogen production, essentially. And I think that's where you're getting at.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how much of a breakthrough this is in hydrogen production. While the cost of the new steel is much cheaper than titanium, which is great, but I don't. So if it's just replacing titanium and the process is exactly the same and it's not producing anything more, then we're just talking about a material cost. Titanium wears out.
Well, the thing is titanium's expensive, right? So
Yep.
if you're replacing expensive titanium components like the membranes, the electrodes, and the separators, you're drastically reducing capital costs for producing green hydrogen through electrolysis.
Oh, okay. So I understand. So these things are all coated in titanium to keep it from corrosion.
Yeah. So the corrosion resistance and strength lend it well to fabricating kind of large scale standardized electrolyzer units with a reduced need for those protective coatings.
Yeah. And so go ahead.
Sorry, the other thing too is if you deploy these electrolyzers with the SS-H2 in seawater, it avoids desalination requirements.
Desalination requirements. So that takes a huge step out.
Yeah, it takes a huge step out. So the survivability in marine environments, it unlocks floating hydrogen production platforms. It unlocks, I know there's, I think, and I could be conspiracy theorist here right now, I think there's a US ship that actually, a destroyer or something, I don't know what class it is, but that runs on hydrogen. And I think right now they have to desalinate the water before putting it through the electrolyzer process. But here, you wouldn't have to do that with this SS-H2.
Yeah, that by itself is very interesting. And the more we bring down the cost of creating hydrogen, the better it's going to be for everyone. So I'm always looking at this cool stuff. And we are always touting hydrogen is going to be the future, which
Yep.
And we need to apparently we had a comment on one of our videos about when we're talking about hydrogen that we need to look at deuterium depleted water, which apparently is a beneficial side effect of the creation of hydrogen process.
Exactly. Yeah. And not only in hydrogen, but there's other corrosive environments that this could be used in. And I hate to say this, but because obviously we're trying to get away from it, but oil and gas productions could be used in mining operations, smelting, which we definitely want to get away from as much as we can, water treatment. There's a whole bunch of different applications here. But if we're talking about hydrogen, yeah, this could be a game changer for hydrogen production and establishing offshore kind of electrolyzers, transporting over seas, so in cargo ships and all that sort of stuff. There's a whole bunch of different ways that this could be used to kind of change the game for hydrogen production, green hydrogen production.
Yeah, and that's kind of the way everyone's headed. So I found some information here, which is interesting. For example, the total cost of a 10 megawatt electrolysis tank in its current stage is approximately $17.8 million, with the structural components contributing up to 53%. So as an estimate, the employment of SS-H2 is expected to cut the cost of the structural material by about 40 times.
That makes that helps to make it more mainstream, right?
Yeah, I mean, 53% of your cost is cut by 40 times. That's significant.
Yeah.
When we're talking about 8 or 9 million, and you probably get that down to 1 million, that becomes a significant chunk.
Yeah.
And
exactly. And the other thing too is we were talking about this SS-H2, and if we focus primarily on manganese too, right? Manganese is going to help to reduce the use of a lot of critical materials in this as well. So it reduces chromium. So chromium is a restricted material. And so SS-H2 has shown that corrosion resistance with lower chromium content than conventional stainless steel. So there's going to be less chromium that needs to be used. Nickel's also restricted and expensive. So investing in manganese alloying to replace it could create a more sustainable composition. There's a bunch of different things, and so it could reduce its dependency on these restricted and hard to find materials.
And this team is no slouches, right? This is part of Professor Hong's ongoing super steel project, which, previous milestones included creation of anti-COVID stainless steel and the development of ultra strong, ultra tough super steel. So this group has been making
he's no slouch.
Yeah. No. Making leaps in this area for a while.
Yeah.
And this really looks interesting. And we're talking about green hydrogen. That the putting green in front of it means that the power used to create the hydrogen was green. The process it was that used to create the hydrogen was green. So because hydrogen is expensive electrically, as well as you can see, we need like $18 million plant to create one at 10 megawatts, which doesn't seem like a lot. It's expensive. And so looking at these things, it's really cool to see this happen. So I take this one step further as we start to see that this is moving towards cheaper, easier hydrogen. When are we going to start seeing it in more practical uses in Canada?
It's a good question. And I'm glad you asked that, because I was just reading a couple of articles yesterday, actually, because there are some hydrogen vehicles out there, right? That people are driving around. So the current price of hydrogen, I can't remember what it is. It's high. To fill up one of those tanks costs around $200. And you would think, okay, great, $200 to fill up a tank. Hydrogen, it's going to last. It's going to be efficient. It's going to last a lot longer than typical gas internal combustion engine. No. So it only lasts, or the range that you get from it is between 200 to 400 miles.
So the cost of hydrogen right now, the cost range is approximately $1.50 to $5 per kilogram. But for green hydrogen, it's $3 to $7 per kilogram.
Yeah. So by drastically reducing the cost to produce it and making it actually more viable, because now you've again, and this comes down to reducing the cost to produce it, but by enabling you to be able to produce it using salt water, you've eliminated a desalination process in that. So there's so much going on in the world of hydrogen. I was just sitting in on a on a panel by the Canadian government last week, 2 weeks ago, on hydrogen. But yeah, the cost is really high. The other thing is the infrastructure is not there yet. But this is probably going to help to enable it. And I don't know how long it's going to take to get this to a production scale for the SS-H2. Obviously, there has to be a lot more work done in testing because of the manganese and how it might interact with the stainless steel. But there's a lot, and if this is proven, this is going to really help to scale the hydrogen production and reduce that cost.
Yeah, and I'm looking at looking at an article here that says here in BC, the retail price of hydrogen at the pump is $14.70 per kilogram.
Yeah,
it says making it competitive with gasoline on a price per kilometer basis. I don't know if that's true, but
that's no. Well, it could be, but I read two different articles on the cost to fill up. So But again, that's the other thing too, is the infrastructure is not there. And even I think it was Shell that pulled their hydrogen pumps.
And
So
I know in the US, and I don't know if they're still doing this, you were getting 3 years of free hydrogen when you bought a hydrogen vehicle.
2 years, I think, or 3 years. Yeah.
It depends where you were, but it's definitely interesting. But yeah, you are limited. You can't just pull in to you have to know where those places are.
Exactly. Yeah. And there's even less here in Canada. So
All right, John, has been great. I'm looking forward to seeing these new technologies as they come to life. What are you working on?
Yeah, so next week I'm excited. For those listening, we've got startup drinks that I'm going to be going to. That's your event, Craig. It's one of my favorite events because it allows anyone to go up and pitch if they want. You buy a ticket, you get to pitch. You can pitch yourself, you can pitch your company, you can pitch an idea, whatever. And you can get a bit of liquid courage included with that ticket, so that you can get up there and pitch, and then some food to kind of wash that down, or to kind of fill your stomach. So it's a great event downtown Toronto. I'm looking forward to that on the Leap Day, February 29th. And then on the Tuesday, I'm going to La French Tech's networking event, just a networking meetup at Boston Pizza. So that's really good.
Is that downtown Toronto?
Yeah, that one's downtown Toronto too.
You have both of your events gone past? Didn't you have
no, this weekend. Yeah, you're right. I gotta pack my suit. So I've got the judging contest for entrepreneurs this weekend, this Sunday at the Hilton, I think it is, in Toronto. That's gonna be interesting. It's gonna be fun. That's through the Future Business Leaders of America. And then had an amazing event with Daniel, Ryan, and Ferial at Creator Club, right by What a Bagel in Toronto. So that was a great event. It was really focused on HR, on branding, and a little bit of funding, but the conversation was really good. It was more of an intimate setting with about 25 people, but there was a lot of good questions, a lot of good conversations.
Yeah, I was frozen there for a bit. Yeah, I'm glad Daniel and the people at Creator Club are great. I've been working with them for a long time. Before Creator Club was around with King Street Media. And Daniel and his team actually created the logo for TorontoStarts. Most people probably don't know that.
He told me that. I forgot to tell you. Yeah.
So it's this thing we talk about. Like, we've been friends in the community for a long time. So anything they do is great. Check out TorontoStarts for all our stuff. Like John said, Startup Drinks TO, February 29th is going to be a great time. If you want to work with John, find him on LinkedIn. John, you were mentioning they just canceled CDAP on Friday of a long weekend, and everybody went a little crazy.
Yeah.
You want to tell us a little bit about what happened, or
who knows? We still don't know what happened, but they closed registration. So if you are registered, you can still take advantage of the CDAP program. So reach out to me if you're registered. Happy to help you move that needle forward. But yeah, on the Friday of a long weekend, they announced that the CDAP program is canceled. And it was only a year and a half in, and it was supposed to go on for 4 years. So something happened. They had a lot of funding. So something happened. I don't know what happened, but yeah. Well, if I find out more, I'll let you know. But yeah, other than that, guys, if you're looking for any kind of government funding help, reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to have that conversation with you. But crazy about CDAP. It's in my 16 years, I've never seen a communication like that happen. Such a failure in communication there.
Yeah, my speculative mind goes to bad places, so I'm not going to say things because it's all speculation. Anything like I know nothing of except for what you told me, so I'm not going to. You know what I think happened?
Exactly. I think you and I share the same sentiment on what we think happened.
Yeah. So we can do that on a conspiracy or projection thing. I don't want to cast shade on anyone when I'm just speculating. But that's great, John. If you want to talk about funding, reach out to John Irwin on LinkedIn. I work with startups all the time. If you're struggling with getting your startup off the ground or growth strategies, market penetration, give me a shout. Go to startupcoach.ca, book a discovery call. We can chat and we can talk about how I can get you on the right track and get you moving.
Yeah.
That's about it, John.
Okay.
We'll see you. If I don't physically see you, I'll see you on Thursday at Startup
Absolutely.
Investor Drinks.
For sure. Thanks, Craig. Have a great
Talk to you
weekend.
soon. You
Bye.
too.